Okay. Hi, Stephen. How are you? Welcome back.
Thank you, Douglas. I'm doing very well. How about yourself?
Doing fine. Doing fine. Thank you. Uh, we looked up when you were on the show the last time, and it was September 29, 2020. So it's almost 2 years ago.
Wow.
So I'm happy that you survived COVID and everything was okay. You never got it, did you?
Surprisingly, no, I never had it, even though I kept traveling. But the world has changed a bit in the last 2 years.
Well, it certainly has. And you've written a new book. What book were we talking about the last time you were on?
I think it was probably Better Decisions, Better Thinking, Better Outcomes, a book I wrote for leaders about how not to get emotionally hijacked in their decision-making processes.
Okay. And now you've got a book. I'm going to guess it's pronounced humany.
That's how I pronounce it. I coined the word. Humany is a combination of human, humanity, and harmony. So humany seems to work pretty well.
Okay, because initially I looked at it and I said hominy. And then I thought of grits, which are hominy grits, right?
Right.
So we've got hominy, harmony, and humany.
Let's go with humany. Right? We're talking about being human in the workplace and bringing harmony into the workplace. So let's go with humany.
Okay. Well, tell us what humany is then.
Well, really, Douglas, I took a look at some of the changes coming out of the pandemic and the great resignation and how the world has changed so significantly. And I really want to write a book to emphasize that the leading of people is really needed for leaders to create workplaces of wellness and harmony. And we don't talk about harmony in the workplace. Matter of fact, when I ask people how harmonizes your workforce, or do you have harmony in your workplace, they kind of laugh at me and think, well, you're crazy. What are you talking about? So I think it's time to take a new approach to leadership.
Typically, in the past, we've had this kind of CEO dictatorship style leadership, and everybody was just supposed to do what they were told, rather like a military environment. And I know that that's been changing. That's been proven not to be too effective. You produce very disgruntled employees, and people don't feel like they're making a contribution to what they're doing. They're just sort of a robot. Where can we go from there? I know that after the pandemic, a lot of people started working remotely, which we'll talk about in a second. But where can we go from that sort of military style to what's next?
I think it's human. I think my favorite philosopher is Yoda from the Star Wars series, and he
Ah,
said,
okay.
you have to unlearn what you have learned. So I think one of my messages in the book is that leaders need to unlearn management and relearn to be human. And managing people is a 1980s construct. It's really goes to what you were talking about there with the kind of the my way or the highway dictatorial leadership style. But managing people is no longer applicable or relevant in today's world. It's why people leave bosses, not organizations. And speaking of the military, U.S. Navy Vice Admiral Grace Murray Hopper brilliantly said this one time. She says, "You manage things, you lead people." And I've taken it a step further. You manage things, you manage processes, you manage policies, you manage procedures, you manage projects, but you have to lead people. People don't want to be managed today.
So, okay, let me just get the definitions right here. So, managing people is basically telling them what to do, how to do it. Leading people is what?
Leading people to be more saying, this is the vision, this is the outcome, this is where we want to get to, and asking them for their contributions on how to get there, how to do it. We'll still have goals, we'll still have objectives, but I think people need to be involved in the process of how to make things happen, not necessarily in what to make happen. I mean, that still is going to be a leadership, a strategy focus, but people they don't want to be told, like you just said, what to do, how to do it, and when to do it.
Was COVID a factor in this book at all? I mean, did it give you ideas or stimulate this book in any way?
I don't think COVID by itself did, but what did was reading the research of how people were reevaluating their lives during COVID and, the great resignation, so many people resigning without another job in hand. I read the other day like 63 million Americans have resigned their jobs in like the last 12 months or something. So the COVID played an influence, I guess, in how it influenced how people were thinking, people reevaluating their lives, not wanting to spend 45 minutes each way and in commuting to and from work, and certainly not willing to go back to a workplace where there was bullying bosses and intolerable relationships, and as you said earlier, that kind of my way or the highway type of managing people. Nobody wants that anymore. So why go to work? And so, based on all that research, I decided to write a book to tell leaders, hey, you're doing it wrong. And if a leader goes back to thinking they can lead like they did before COVID, they're going to be sorely mistaken.
So you think COVID actually helped people to sort of stop and smell the roses, to use an old
Most
phrase? Yeah.
most definitely, and then not just smell the roses, but more importantly, understand that families are important. Looking after elderly parents during COVID, the lockdown situation, educating children at home, doing homeschooling, people really had to understand that this is a different lifestyle and it's a better lifestyle. And that's why I focus on harmony. It's not about work-life balance. I'm really talking about work-life harmony.
We had touched on remote learning there for a minute, and I want to get back to that. Sorry, remote working and remote learning, but let's concentrate on remote work. The benefits are obvious. No more commuting. If your entire company can work remotely, you don't even need to have an office anymore. You don't need a building. It's a huge cost savings. Is there any disadvantage to it? Or is it too soon to really tell if there's going to be a disadvantage to it?
No, it's not too soon, Douglas, and it's something we should think about in particularly, and we saw this during the lockdowns as well. People are actually working longer hours because they didn't have to commute. So they're actually putting in more time working from home. I think the thing we have to be careful of is those boundaries. Where does work stop and home life begins? And again, that's why I focus on harmony rather than balance. I mean, like in my own life, I don't work Friday afternoons. That's just what I like to do. But I will work Sunday afternoons, partly because I have clients in Asia, and that's their Monday morning. So that to me is harmony. I get my work done when it suits me. So it's not about do I work 40 hours a week and do I relax 40 hours a week. Does my life have harmony? Am I able to execute what I need to do in a way that's harmonizing for me, which would be certainly different for you and certainly different for probably every member of your audience.
Do you think that people are going to become more distracted working from home, though, and perhaps their maybe not productivity, but the quality of the work that they're doing is going to suffer?
I would argue, Douglas, that it's somebody who is a high performer in a workplace will be a high performer working from home. It's more intrinsic driven than any external motivations that they might have. Same thing. I mean, how many people do we have in the workplace who spend their day at the water cooler, who talk on Monday about football for several hours during the day, who kind of skive off? How many people playing mahjong on their computers in the workplace? Same thing. If they're not going to be productive in the workplace, they're not going to be productive at home. If you are a good performer and self-driven to execute professionally and with quality, it doesn't matter where you're working, you'll still do that.
Let me ask you a little about what you do now. Do you do consulting work? Is that primarily you go into companies and tell them what they're doing wrong?
I guess that's one way of looking at it. I try to go into companies and say, I actually take a different approach. I try to go into companies and say, there are these opportunities that you're missing. I do a lot of mentoring and coaching of leaders from at every level, from first-time leaders on up to entrepreneurs and business owners. But in the consulting area, it's more about how do you develop talent? And I think that's a key aspect going forward. One of the causes of the Great Resignation, and a lot of research showed this, was because companies as they always do in times of crisis, they cut their training and development budget. And so you got particularly the younger generation. They want to grow. They want personal growth as well as professional growth. And so when the companies are not doing that, they're going to look somewhere else. So I actually go into organizations and say, it's time to really look at how you're developing your talent and really restructure your organization around talent development.
Do you get any pushback from CEOs on that?
Well, they always, everyone is going to say, oh, it's going to cost this much. I think the number one pushback always is, what if I train my people and then they leave? And I will look them in the eye and I'll say very frankly, what if you don't train them and they stay? You can't grow your company if people are not growing their skills. Interesting research, Douglas, from last year from worldwide showed that CEOs around the world believe that 50% of their revenues in 2027, so 5 years from now, 50% of their revenues will come from products and services that they do not currently offer to their consumers or to the corporations they sell to. So think about that. Creativity, innovation, that's not going to come from micromanaging. It's not going to come from telling people what to do and how to do it. So someone's got to create these products and services where these revenues are going to come from. And it's only going to come if you keep developing the skills of your people. So no, I think that people need to do that.
What company in the United States do you think is really on the right track with this?
Micron Technology, a semiconductor company based up in Idaho, does a very, very good job of this. I think some companies do a good job of it in certain areas, but unfortunately they fall off in other areas. I mean, Starbucks, I've always been an admirer of Starbucks and Howard Schultz, but they've had their social issues in recent years. They've had their management turnover in recent years as well. So there's no perfect company out there except mine, because mine's a one-person company. I haven't got the perfect company.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I have a two-person company, and it's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, absolutely. That's the way of the world today. But I think internationally, Singapore Airlines has been stellar in this area, both from a marketing standpoint of focusing on customers, but also a people development standpoint. Malaysian Airlines in Malaysia has done a pretty good job over the years as well. But, unfortunately, it's not been the ethos of corporate leaders who are focused on quarterly profits, because that's where their bonuses come from. And so they're not focusing on that as much as they should.
Well, I think on that, we're going to have to kind of wind this down. Your book is out now and available?
It'll be out in the middle of August, so about 2 weeks from today's recording date.
Also, do you have a website that you want to give out?
You can reach me at Caliente Leadership. Caliente is Caliente, leadership.com. For those of you who know Spanish, Caliente means hot, but the second definition is passionate. And I'm a bit passionate about leadership. So it's CalienteLeadership.com, and you can find me there.
Well, always a pleasure to have you on the show, Stephen, and best of luck with the new book and everything you're doing.
Thank you, Douglas, and keep doing a fine job of this show. I really enjoy when I get a chance to watch it. It's really enjoyable.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.